The purpose of this video is to walk through the peer comparison benchmarking tool built using Tableau Public. I'm going to walk through a number of the menus as well as explain how the closeness parameter is used to form peer groups within this tool. I want to start by showing that there are 4 different tabs along the top. The first one is to determine fit, and this is really where the user should start. The user is generally going to start by picking a focus school, and for the purposes of this demonstration, I have chosen Green Central High. If you notice though, there are all 565 schools that are included in this analysis that are referred to in the paper listed here within these menus. But I'm going to go ahead and select Green Central High just to ensure that that's there. And we're going to talk through what each of these pieces means. If you notice here, there are a lot of dots on this map, and if I mouse over any of them within the tooltips, you're going to see characteristics of each of those schools. I have not yet done any filtering for closeness, thus you'll see every high school in the analysis actually showing up on the map. The darker the green dot, the closer the school is based on the criteria that I've chosen to the focus school. And if I look through here, Green Central High is actually located there, and it is the darkest. And you'll notice that there are other darker green dots around that indicate some closer fits. But there are also some very light dots that indicate that they are not a close fit at all. So I'm going to start here by going down to the bottom left-hand corner and changing this closeness parameter to actually be 8. This is going to allow me to filter just for the schools that are the closest to my school of choice. So I'll still see Green Central High here, but I see many fewer dots based on the criteria that I've chosen here on the right. These parameters over on the right are the same 7 that are referred to in the paper. There are 4 that relate to the school characteristics, and another 3 that relate to the student performance. The dashboard defaults to these sample weights to only match on characteristics of the school, not on student performance. But you'll notice that the peer group actually changes if I adjust any given parameter. So let's say I wanted to put a greater emphasis on the geographic distance between schools and really wanted to make sure that I was only looking at schools that were really close to Green Central High. If I click and drag that weight all the way over to 10, the peer group changes. And notice there are fewer that meet that closeness parameter. I could expand that piece by changing the closeness maybe back out to, let's say, 7.5. And we'll notice that a few more schools meet that threshold. If I adjust the geographic distance back to 1, I'll notice that I have the same peer group as before, and I'm actually going to go ahead and truncate that to just the closeness that's within 8.0 or higher. I can do the same thing with any of these school characteristics, and I can also match schools that are close on any particular measure of student performance. The next tab we're going to go to is the Measures tab. That's going to give us a map representation of various school outcome measures. The dashboard defaults to talking about the EVOS growth index for the given schools. So again, I'm going to mouse over Green Central High again and notice that their EVOS growth index was a 1.6. I can look down here at the measure values legend and see that it's centered at 0. So if there was positive student growth in the school, or if they met growth, they're over 0. If they're less than 0, that means that they were below that median benchmark growth line. And I can easily visualize on the map the schools in green, the ones that were over that 0.0 benchmark of growth, and then a number of schools that were red and did not meet that same benchmark of growth. I could do the same thing for a number of other measure names. For example, let's see what happens if I go to English 2. Notice the colors of the dots on the map change as well as the legend. I can see that the maximum school in this peer group had 45.5% of its students career and college ready on the English 2 end of course exam, and the bottom school in the group had only 17.4% of its students career and college ready. If I mouse back over Green Central High, they're toward the bottom of this mix at only 24.6%. This may be an opportunity, though, where Green Central may want to look to another school that is close to them in terms of characteristics that had a higher achievement on this particular measure. For example, Washington High is a darker green here, and we can see that their students last year scored 42% proficient on this measure. And so by looking at some of the practices there, Green Central may be able to learn from Washington High about how to improve their students' readiness on the English 2 exam. The same thing can be done for a number of different pieces. And we can also look at some of the other measures that go into the school characteristics and student performance in this as well. One more I'll take a look at is graduation rate. Again, we'll see the same type of coloration. The bottom school is at 75.2%. The highest is at 91.1%. And see the distribution there geographically across the schools that are the closest matches according to the parameters that we set. Note that also within this dashboard, as with all of the others, that I can readjust the characteristics that go into that peer group. So if I decide that I want to change one of the parameters, I can use these sliders or use these inputs to change that number to differently weight the parameters that go into that closeness metric. The next piece I want to go into is the table view. And the table view allows me to visualize this peer group with the values placed in a table rather than on a map. And I notice here that I'm going to have to scroll down to see some of the schools that are closest to the bottom. And so I'm noticing here that I can see everything up through 8.2. So I'm actually going to change my closeness threshold to 8.3 to limit myself to fewer schools. If I notice here, I have a peer group now where the closeness, the lowest closeness school is at 8.4. I'm going to highlight Green Central High, and I can also use this visual to see where that school lies in comparison to the other schools in its peer group on a number of the measures here across the top. For example, I'd like to know where Green Central falls within their peer group on the ACT. So I can go over to the ACT percent comparison, click on the sort button, and see that Green Central High is near the bottom. They're actually second from the last in this particular peer group on the ACT. But I can see that there are a number of schools that are performing higher. For example, Bedingfield High has an ACT proficiency of over 60%. Again, that may be a good school for Green Central to look to if they're looking to improve this particular metric. I can do the same thing on any number of measures. I'm going to go over here now and look at the Math 1 Career and College Ready percentage. Again, I can sort on the school of interest and see that Green Central performs a little bit better within their peer group, but is still lower than average, and there are certainly schools that are performing better on this metric that they could look to in order to improve. The final tab provides a graphical view. And again, it's going to default to the EVOS Growth Index, but there's a number of different things that I can use to calculate the measure of interest. Again, I can see here that Green Central, by highlighting them, actually within their EVOS score is near the top of their peer group. I can also expand this piece to look at schools that are not quite as close. If I change this to go down to schools that are as close as at least a 7 on their closeness score, I can see that Green Central still falls above average in this peer group, but that it's much larger. I can use the color codings to understand how close that school is in fit to Green Central High. The more blue that the school is, the closer it is in the characteristics that we have set to the school of interest than some of the schools that are in orange. And we'll notice the top performers here in this peer group actually are not nearly as close to Green Central as some of the others that we saw. And if I set my closest threshold back to the 8.3 that I had before, I'll notice that I'm only seeing schools that are truly close to them. Just as with the other dashboard, I can also change these components to look at other measures of interest for that particular school. I hope that you found this overview interesting and informative, and I hope that it provides an excellent supplement to the paper that I provide. Thank you for your attention and your consideration.